Armored Saint are one of the quintessential US power metal bands, and yes, US power metal and Euro power are two completely separate things. That means when your dumbass comments on this video that Armored Saint are not power metal, you clearly have no idea what US power metal is, because you are a mentally deficient simpleton that can't fucking understand metal genres past your black metal that just sounds like Darkthrone. Grrr. But anyways, Armored Saint, their 80s run of albums are one of the most consistent 80s runs of all time. Not even a single weak song to behold. Until maybe get to the 2000s when they come back. But essentially, Armored Saint is worth checking out, especially the 80s run, and we're going to get to why. Now, the band was formed in 1982 by the Sandoval brothers, Phil and Gonzo. Phil being on guitar and Gonzo being on drums. And then they recruited the late great David Pritchard for guitars, and boy, this guy was a fucking shredder. Was the soul of the band in the early days. And then my favorite member of the band and one of my favorite metal vocalists of all fucking time, you know him, John Bush. And he's a good Bush, he ain't no untrimmed Bush, I'll tell you why. Although you may know him from being in Anthrax and when he was shit in that shitty era of Anthrax that we all just want to forget about. No. Give him another chance, because in Armored Saint, he was a god amongst boys. Because back in the day in Armored Saint, he was a real man's heavy metal vocalist. He could do the screams, he could do the gruff vocals, he could do all of it. In fact, in these early days, there was another band that even wanted to get him in there, but he thought, maybe he'd try his luck with Armored Saint because they'd be more popular. And this band, I don't know if you guys heard of them, they're kind of more underrated. I'll leave it at that. I'll do some episode on them some other time. And then they got the prolific bassist that is quite a boss, known as Joey Vera, which you guys might recognize from the Fates Warning retrospective. Yes, that man. But they got the name from the band from watching the movie Excalibur. So, they wanted to have like a knight theme and, knights in shining armor, crusaders, and attack the castles and whatnot. Pretty nerdy, but like I said, they're a real man's heavy metal band, motherfucker.
One of the things about us, probably in retrospect, is that we came out of LA, but we didn't really sound like a lot of the LA bands. We kind of sounded like a band from England.
Yeah.
I mean, our favorite bands were British.
Yeah.
I mean, I have no doubt about it. The two genres got really popular, hair metal, thrash metal, and we weren't really part of that. And so sometimes I think it worked against us. But at the end of the day, I think the most important thing was to just kind of have our own sound.
Then they did some demos, most notably the song Lessons Learned, which made it onto Metal Massacre, the pretty famous compilations that Brian Slagle would do back in the day. And this kind of got the ball rolling for them. The problem is that they should have stayed with Metal Blade. They even did a little EP for them. That was the Armored Saint EP that had 3 songs.
You put together Armored Saint, you come out with your first EP. Can you tell me how you financed this? Was it with your parents? Was it, money that you guys saved up?
The financing of that is actually an interesting story. We were doing a show up in a place here in the suburbs of Los Angeles called Mount Baldy. It's a ski lodge, a ski slope area. Not so good, but it's still pretty fairly popular.
Yeah.
And we played a show up there where you had to take a ski lift to get to the show. And it was not a good show. It was poorly attended. It was probably pretty lame to even play in. But we did play nevertheless. And one of the few people who attended the show was Tommy Lee. Tommy and Joey Vera, the bass player of Armored Saint, were in a band before Armored Saint together. And so he came up to see us. And after the show, they took off to go party and go somewhere. They drove down the hill, and we all stayed up at the ski lodge. That was the plan. They ended up getting in a car accident. They rolled the car that they were in. Joey was in the back of it. There was a kind of a rear window that was slanted, and he was back there, and it shattered all over his hands.
Wow.
So his hands were all cut up. Next thing we know, we get a call the next day, or somebody called home, and they said Joey's in the hospital and his hands are all cut up. We're like, what? So it turned out he was going to be fine, but he did obviously have an injury, and he had some kind of insurance settlement that paid for the recovery of his hands. And also, he got some extra money. And from that extra money, he decided to pay for the demo
That's
of the
crazy.
Yeah. And the funny thing is actually it's in the book The Dirt from Motley Crue, and Vince talks about it, but Vince gets it wrong. He says that they were on a motorcycle, which was not true at all. They were in a car. So it just goes to show you that some of the stuff you read is, you know, wherever the source is, it may not be accurate.
The record has been set straight, my friend.
But, you know, they had some stuff going on there with Metal Blade. Metal Blade loves their bands, and they love Armored Saint. And Armored Saint even went back to Metal Blade at one point. But for some reason, they went with a label called Chrysalis, and Chrysalis anally fucked this band. Anally fucked them over. Because they could have promoted them so much better. All they did for them was one music video for the first album, and then really dropped them off to fend for themselves. And that really pissed off the band. And they could have done so much better. I mean, this is the early days of metal. They could have gotten so much more attention. They were very appealing. Very, very fucking appealing. I mean, they're only really getting some attention nowadays. Imagine what they could have gotten back then if they weren't fucked. But anyways, they eventually did do a music video for the band for the song Can You Deliver off their first album, which we'll get to right now, March of the Saint. God, I remember the first time I heard this band and this album, I was like, this is what I've been looking for forever. I wanted some more knight in shining armor metal that had balls to it, that wasn't gay cheese pizza power metal or macaroni and cheese technical power metal. No, I want some straight up bare bones US power metal, and these boys deliver it. They deliver it like a fucking pizza. Speaking of that, the song Can You Deliver that has the music video is a cool, hilarious music video that makes them look like fucking Power Rangers. But here's the issue. They should have had like a Domino's pizza commercial or something like that with that song. So, you know, they'd come in through the ceiling because they're coming from above. You have John Bush and all the fuckers dropping in on some family just sitting there starving. And then a knight comes through the fucking door with a sword. And on that sword is a pizza impaled on the bitch. And you can deliver the pizza to them. That would be the greatest commercial of all time. But once again, they dropped the fucking ball. That shit should have been in a goddamn delivery commercial.
Can you deliver? Can you deliver? Can you deliver? Can you deliver?
Now another thing is that they got a producer by the name of Michael James Jackson, the guy that produced Creatures of the Night, that gave that album a heavy, ballsy sound, and they got him to do this album because of that. However, he dropped the ball too. He made the album sound really, really thin and kind of glossy without any balls to it, and that pissed everyone in the band off.
Michael James Jackson, who produced
Michael James Jackson, yes, from he did Lick It Up and Creatures of the Night, which he did great on those records. He was, I think, going through a divorce or something at the time, and had a little drama in his life, and it might have backfired on us. And then there was also, it was between him and Michael Wagner, who we know what Michael Wagner did with Accept, and obviously Master of Puppets, and so I think, you know, no disrespect to Michael James Jackson, he was a nice enough guy, but it was probably the wrong decision. And so sometimes our record, we always had this kind of raw, gritty, live thing. I mean, you'll see it tonight. That's just who we are. We're like almost like this glorified garage band, and it just wasn't captured the way we really are live.
To this day, they look less fondly upon this album because of the sound of it, but the music is so fucking good, who cares? In fact, a lot of people, including myself, like this type of sound anyway, so quit bitching about your production, you fucking whores. But the sad thing is, apparently, they're in debt for making this album.
Oh yeah, because the record ended up costing so much money. I think we probably, I'm speculating here because I really don't know the exact figure at this point, but I want to say somewhere in the neighborhood of about $350,000. We were 20 years old, you know, we didn't know any better. We were just kind of going with the flow, and it was, you know, an awesome moment, and we were riding the wave. So as time went by, we realized, whoa, we spent a lot of money on that record, and hence we never, ever recouped. We made
Wow.
the adjustment as records went on. Like Delirious Nomad, I think, was half that amount of money, and
Sure.
I think Raising Fear was half the amount of money of Delirious Nomad. So we made the adjustments, but by that point, we were so far in debt that we just were never going to get out.
Wow. So the corporation, let's call it Armored Saint, still owes money for that first album to the record label, I guess?
Yeah, we still owe, we don't get any royalties from those first 3 records. Luckily enough, we were smart with publishing. We did take a publishing advance for the first album, but we ended up, by recommendation of our management at the time, saying, they said, don't take any more publishing advances. You'll never, ever recoup.
Yeah.
So we did for the next 2 records, and you know what? We're in the black with publishing. So for
Okay, good.
probably the last, 15 years, we've been receiving royalties for those records, publishing-wise.
I mean, right off the bat, you have so many classic songs on here. Like I said, Can You Deliver? And the titty-sucking title track, March of the Saint. Everything about it, from the intro to the end, goddamn, it's anthemic as fuck.
Then it's time to release the march on your mind. It's a march of the saint. March of the saint.
Madhouse, speed metal, mastery, seducer, slow and chunky. I love the anthemic mutiny on the world. There's a nice ballad on here called Take a Turn, but my favorite song has to be a song that's kind of underrated towards the end of the album, but goddamn, every time I hear like a badass drum intro with the hi-hat bashing going on, it gets me every fucking time. Stricken by Fate is the most epic, kick-ass song on the fucking album. So the band, being pissed off with that production, decided to give it another try. So they got the famous producer Max Norman, love that man and his production style, and they went into the studio to record a follow-up to it that I argue is maybe even better because it gives them the chance to do everything they wanted to do. That is, deliver the attitude that they wanted to convey that was missing on the last album. They had this ballsy attitude to them, and they delivered it at full effect on Delirious Nomad. Now, the good and bad things about Delirious Nomad are the tone. Like I said, it's more ballsy, bite you type of shit going on here. Almost like Dude Bro Metal before that ever happened. It's so ballsy. It has so much attitude to it. But it also loses that kind of power metal vibe that the last album had, that epic sound. But that's okay with me. They're doing something a little bit different and makes the songs actually kind of catchier, I think. And they have more of a long-lasting impact. What's weird, though, is that the title track for this album kind of isn't the title track. It's called Nervous Man, but in the song, at the end of the chorus, he says Delirious Nomad, so I don't know why they didn't just fucking call the song Delirious Nomad. So, what the fuck was that?
Look at the speed you ran. You're just a nervous man. Too much for your own hand. Delirious Nomad.
Long Before I Die is also just breathing motherfucking attitude. There are 2 really damn good fast songs on here, though, that kind of have a little bit less attitude, more speed metal. You have Released and Conqueror. Motherfucking Conqueror. It has some riffs in there that actually remind me a lot of March of the Saint. The laugh for the sake of motherfucking heaviness. And you also have an incredibly personal, melodic, short, epic song that starts out with a lengthy intro that goes on for almost half the song, building up to something. You're like, Jesus Christ, is this a fucking instrumental? I don't got time for that shit. But no, it's not an instrumental. It goes into a soft section of John singing beautifully. The beautiful man he is, he's just going at it. And then the riffs and everything come in, and has one of the most epic goddamn choruses of all time.
Ruin, final stun,
they're not done kicking your ass. In the Hole has a creative fucking riff, and then you have my favorite song on the album. Kind of more underrated one, but goddamn, that intro riff is so ballsy. It has so much groovy riffs to it. God damn, it's a fucking killer song. You're Never Alone, easily the standout on this album. One more song I gotta mention though, because there's so many important, interesting standouts, I gotta feature this one. Over the Edge is probably the most attitude-driven, sleazy song on here. It's very bluesy. It reminds me of some sort of like cowboys shootout in the fucking saloon vibe going on. So much goddamn attitude. It's unbelievable. They do quite a few songs kind of like this throughout the years that always have a bit of a chunky groove to it, and it is a damn good one. So, going into the next album, shit started to get a little bit stinky. Phil Sandoval left because he was getting pissed off with having to deal with Chrysalis and the band and all that shit, so he left for a little bit, but his brother stayed in, Mr. Gonzo on the drums, so it was just a four-piece at this point. And they went in to record their heaviest album ever, the most US power metal album ever. They decided, let's mix that heavy attitude and the melodic power metal shit into one fucking album, and we're gonna call it Razy Fear. God damn, Raising Fear. I mean, they just keep hitting it out of the park with every album. All four of these classic albums from the 80s have been my favorite album from the band at some time or another. And this was my first favorite. This is my first love from the band. It caught my attention right off the hit of the first song, Raising Fear. Holy shit. And then you have a cover song that you think is going to suck, you know, because the label forced them to record it because Chrysalis is fucking gay. Saturday Night Special, a cover from Leonard Skinner. You'd think that would turn out shitty, but it works perfectly. It sounds like an Armored Saint song. It rules. Out on a Limb is like the sequel to Over the Edge on the last album, but even more attitude. It sounds like goddamn biker metal. Isolation, beautiful ballad, and then Chemical Euphoria, probably one of the most heavy, kick-ass songs on the fucking album. Everyone loves this song. The song Chemical Euphoria is about drug addiction, you know, heroin, morphine, all that shit. It's Chemical Euphoria. Every track, Frozen Will Legacy, is so goddamn epic, and that chorus, anthemic as fuck. Terror, a song about terrorism, rules. It's fucking awesome. You have a song that was a bonus track that's kind of similar to Out on a Limb, that's on every release after the original edition, pretty much, called Crisis of Life, and this one's fucking good too. The song Human Vulture is one of the most awesome Armored Saint songs ever.
Keep that steak away! Crosses burn my eyes! Keep that bloody steak away! Crosses burn my eyes! I've had to live another 100 years before I say goodbye!
But they had to get away from Chrysalis because it was like a fucking abusive relationship. Because they were just coming home every night and just beating Armored Saint relentlessly and drinking at Jack Daniels and then pissing in the fucking kitchen sink. And you're like, why you pissing in the kitchen sink? And he's like, fuck you, bitch, I worked for this house. And then slap across the fucking face. They had to get out of that goddamn house. So they signed on back with Metal Blade, a loving healthy relationship, might I add, and they did a live album known as Saints Will Conquer, which most people are going to get really mad at me for saying this. First of all, I'm not the biggest live album guy to begin with, but I'm not the biggest fan of this live album. It's okay. Most people get really pissed at me for saying that because it's the last thing to feature the legend David Pritchard. In fact, there's even an original song in here called No Reason to Live that was not on any other album before that. But to me, I don't like the song. It sounds like they just took something that was completely half-baked from the past. They're like, shit, he's about to die. We got to kind of record something. I don't know. I don't like it, sorry, but I love David Pritchard, and he sadly got leukemia around this time. So they had to kind of give him his last rites. He was writing some songs for the next album around the time he got diagnosed. In fact, they even had Phil come back, and they even got a new guitarist to replace him. And this new guy replaced him while David Pritchard was alive, so he was able to actually run around their ideas with each other. Like, you know, the new guy would bring in his riffs, and then David Pritchard would kind of give him some suggestions and shit like that. So it really felt like David Pritchard was still part of the band. In fact, the album was a dedication to the legend. The guitarist's name was Jeff Duncan, and he does a killer job. He's not David Pritchard, but he does such a good job, especially on this next album, that you never notice. Let's talk about the motherfucking mammoth! No. A symbol of salvation.
We were on the ground as far as down as you can get. When Dave died, that was about it. You know, we just were like, what now? What do we do? And that inspired us so to just kind of kick back in.
Dave would have wanted you to continue on with the band instead of breaking up.
Yeah. Because he would have been pissed we didn't record any of these tunes.
Plus, he was there from the beginning to the long haul, and if we were to just blow it out, you know, it would be just kind of like quitting, you know. And he was never really like that. He was never a quitter.
Symbol of salvation. Who's a symbol of salvation? What's a symbol of salvation?
Now, David Pritchard's impact is deeply felt on this album because he wrote motherfucking 8 of the goddamn songs in this album. 8 destructive tracks. And Joey Vera actually contributed quite a few tracks as well. In fact, the epic song towards the end of the album, like the best song, was written by Joey, which we'll get to in a second here. Now, this album was actually well promoted by Metal Blade. In fact, this is probably their most famous album because Metal Blade finally gave a shit. Finally, someone fucking gave a shit about this goddamn band, and it paid off. They got some attention. They got 2 music videos for Last Train Home and Rain of Fire, both amazing songs. Rain of Fire being heavy as fuck, super anthemic, and then Last Train Home being a really awesome balladish type of song, but it actually has a bit of a dark flair to it. In fact, the verse kind of sounds a bit like a dark Alice in Chains type of song. Speaking of that, the producer, going all over the place here, Dave Jordan was actually famous for producing Alice in Chains albums before he came on to do this. You also have fantastic rockin' songs like Droppin' Like Flies, which is about a bunch of people in the record industry getting pretty much fired at the time. There's like almost like a cleansing going on because of all the fucking over going on. I mean, this is the beginning of the 90s, so there's going to be a giant shift within the record industry because everything's going more towards alternative music. So you have all these idiots that are maybe still trying to focus on metal. Although I love metal, it would be stupid to still focus on that. So those people were probably getting their ass handed to them, or they were getting run out of business from fucking debt and shit like that. So they couldn't be any happier because they have had such horrible experiences with the record industry. And thank God they have a loving relationship with motherfucking Brian Slagle and his crystal ball. Tribal Dance is such a fantastic song. Fantastic. It's so weird. It's about cocaine, the Colombian cartels, and mostly, you know, because cocaine a lot of times comes from Colombia and sold in America. I love, though, how it's talking about how the cocaine is coming from Colombia for sure, but it's more so shitting on America because they say, you know, the demand is high today. And I love how John does some beaner speak on the song. It's fucking awesome. It adds some more layers to it. They have an interesting affair with Another Day with an intro of Half Drawn Bridge being something that Joey Vera wrote. And then Another Day is this beautiful ballad about the band kind of having to carry on without David Pritchard, but David Pritchard wrote the music for it. So it feels very, very personal. And then motherfucking Symbol of fucking South motherfucking Nation. God damn! This song was, believe it or not, a song that Jeff Duncan had wrote and showed to David Pritchard, and David's like, dude, that's some heavy good shit. You gotta use that. And he's like, what are you talking about? That's one of the weaker things I wrote. He's like, you're a fucking idiot, because David Pritchard knew best. He said, that's the motherfucking title track right there. And I agree with David Pritchard. This song fucking slays every bit of it. The intro destroys. Then it hits you with the verse riff. So groovy and kick-ass. And then the pre-chorus, and then the chorus. Goddamn, every step of it rules. Hanging Judge is a really awesome deep cut that was actually used in the movie Hellraiser 3. Then you have Warzone. Feels totally fucking classic. It feels like the Armored Saint of old, but more armor. Like, this is the biggest fucking set of armor this motherfucker can muster. But for some weird reason, Joey Vera hates this song. And, oh god, it makes me want to hate Joey Vera because this song is so fucking unbelievably good. One of the best songs in the album. Thank God for Brian Slagle, because he super objected to Joey's objection to the song. Said, you better put this fucking song on the album now! But the most important song on the album is the epic song towards the end. One that's written pretty much entirely by Joey Vera. And you can hear his crazy fucking ass doing like acoustic bass in the beginning. It's super melodic. Very, very, very well written song called Tainted Past. There's so many awesome acoustics to the song. It almost feels like a ballad at first. But then once you get to the first chorus onwards, it's heavy guitars. The chorus is super anthemic and has John Bush's best vocal performance of all time. It is like the greatest song they've ever written. One of the greatest metal songs ever. In fact, the song is even more special because it features a demoed guitar solo that David Pritchard had wrote during the demo sessions for this song, and they put it on the final album. So it's just magic. Magic all around. But sadly, although the band was absolutely on motherfucking fire at this point, they felt like they couldn't really continue onwards, or they felt it'd be kind of wrong, or something was going on. Even though the tour was kind of successful, they went around with suicidal tendency and their crazy fucking asses. But then John Bush got invited to go fuck around with Anthrax and Scott Ian's bald ass head, douchey fucking head, and you know, he went on to make some shitty albums with them. Although I like some of the songs during that era, let's be honest, Armored Saint blows 90s Anthrax out of the fucking water. We all know that. We all know how bad Volume 8 is. We all know how good Armored Saint is now. Hopefully, unless you had shit in your ears and you weren't paying attention to a motherfucking thing I said. But in 1999, almost before the new millennium here, like almost every other metal band that had broken up in the early 90s, they reformed. The classic Symbol of Salvation lineup had gotten their asses back together from whatever side projects they were doing. They wrangled all their asses in. Unfortunately, two of them were going bald, Joey and John, but we don't care because those crystal balls are our favorite crystal balls. Scott Ian's bald fucking ass can go fuck himself. Kerry King's bald fucking ass can go fuck himself. We love our boys Joey and John. Well, they went into the studio to record a new album. Now, you'd think they would do something more in the vein of like Symbol of Salvation or maybe like a throwback album to play it safe. But man, they kept marching on, and they decided to do something really different, almost like a hard rock album, but it's really, really good and deserves more attention from people. This is Revelation.
Tell me, what's your pleasure? Over the places, man. What's your pleasure? Running down your spine. What's your pleasure? Oh, I'm about to lose your mind.
It's, like I said, more of a hard rock album, but I guarantee you, if you give it a chance, you'll probably like it. There's some really damn good songs on here. Pay Dirt is really, really fucking catchy. At first, it gets you off guard. The whole album does. At first, it kind of sounds like 90s Anthrax, which is not fucking good, but it's almost like 90s Anthrax not done like shit.
I'll never lose my shirt. I'll never lose my shirt. Someday I'll hit pay dirt. I'll never lose my shirt. I'll rather die of thirst. Someday I'll hit pay dirt.
There's other really good ones on here. After Me comes The Flood. You have Damage, which is a real slow, bluesy burner. Fucking awesome, awesome, awesome song. And you have Creepy Feeling, which is a kind of weird one, but I like it. But one of my favorites has to be Den of Thieves. It reminds me a lot of Legacy. It has so many beautiful segments of it, but also really awesome, heavy guitars that kind of give off more of an epic vibe. Probably one of the best songs off here for sure. Then, of course, you have easily the highlight on here. It's not like a throwback song or anything like that. The reason it's the highlight is because it's so fucking catchy. It's unbelievable. You have Control Issues, which is a bit long, and they could have shortened it down and made it like a hit song or something because of how fucking catchy it was, but they didn't, but it turned out just fucking fine. My issue with it, though, is that for once, Armored Saint sadly has some chinks in their armor. The Saint has chinked. No me digas. It's not because it's in Spanish why I don't like it, but it just goes nowhere. I mean, it's a cool idea, I guess, to do the whole song in Spanish, but nothing about it's that good, in my opinion. To me, it's kind of filler. But the rest of this album is pretty spot on. Not perfect, but a damn good listen, that's for sure. Now, they did a tour and everything. Armored Saint at this point were back in full force, and they decided to release a compilation of a bunch of awesome stuff called Nod to the Old School. And you know what? Fuck it. Let's talk about it. Now, the reason why we're talking about Nod to the Old School and devote an entire section to it is because usually I'll devote an entire section of a retrospective to a compilation or an EP if I feel like it's enough to talk about, like it's maybe studio length of material. And you know what? There's actually quite a lot of demo material recorded around 89 that's put on this album that actually all sounds pretty good, that was not used at all. You have about 6 songs of that. You also have a really good song that ended up on the soundtrack. You also have 2 new songs for this album that were recorded around this time. And you also have some live stuff, which is garbage. You also have some covers, which are garbage. And you also have the EP. So you don't even need the Armored Saint EP. At that point, the EP is worthless because essentially the only 2 songs that were worth getting that EP to begin with, On My Way and Lessons Learned, are on this album essentially in their original formats that they were on the EP that they did at the beginning of their career. So useless essentially. But they have a bunch of original material on here that never made it onto an album, and all of it's really fucking good. In fact, if this was all like recorded as one entire album, it would be easily the best album that they had in years. Why is that? That's because it has so much of that old school vibe to it. I love me some Symbol of Salvation. There's some really good old school songs in there like Warzone and Symbol of Salvation that sound heavy and epic. But as you kind of continue with Armored Saint's discography, you lose a little bit of that edge, and I think David Pritchard brought a lot of that power metal edge to the music, but he actually has a lot of songwriting credits here back on this rehashed material that was from the demo days, because these were recorded right before Symbol of Salvation, essentially for that album, but never made it onto it. But it should have been on that album, because this stuff is just as good. Some of it's really good, and they also have some cool songs that were written by Joey Vera that are really fucking groovy. Let's quickly track by track the songs that actually matter. You have Real Swagger and Unstable, which were the songs written for this album that were really, really good. Unstable being the best of the two. Then you have a damn good song that was written around 86, 88, somewhere in the mid 80s, called You Can Run But You Can't Hide, which is awesome biker metal. It reminds me of Out on a Limb, but maybe even better. It made it onto the soundtrack of Decline of Western Civilization Part 2. Then you have the EP songs. Stricken by Fate's on there, but it's worthless because you have it on the debut. You also have Envy on there, which is worthless because it's on the debut. But Lesson Learned, pretty good song, but kind of overrated, I think. And then On My Way is actually really good. That's the best on the EP by far. Then the demo songs. You have Betty 79, which is like a little intro track thing. It's just 30 seconds or so. It's just weird noises. What the fuck was that? But then you have some really good stuff in here, like People, which sounds like a Living Colour song. It's really groovy and badass. Get Lost is really fucking good. Tongue in Cheek sounds a lot like a song that ends up on La Raza, known as Get Off the Fence, and it fucking rules because it has such a badass riffy groove to it. And Pirates is amazing because it has this awesome kick-ass speedy riff, obviously written by David Pritchard. Medieval Nightmares is pretty good, but my favorite song has to be Nothing Between the Ears. Holy fuck! The riff on that is ginormous! So all in all, I would definitely recommend getting this compilation. I would even treat it as an album of its own that sort of gives you a taste of the early days, the mid-'80s, the late 80s, and the 2000s era. That's all stuff that actually kind of cohesively works together. Even the stuff that was recorded in the 2000s era actually has a bit of an old school vibe to it. It's more metal than it was hard rock, so it's kind of more towards the original sound than, say, Revelation was. But like Armored Saint fashion, they went into hiatus again for a long fucking time, almost 10 goddamn years again, so that John Bush can go fuck around in Anthrax. But they keep fucking around with him. They're like, John Bush is in the band. No, Joey Belladonna's in the band. John Bush come back. Joey Belladonna come back. Blah, blah. And John Bush wised up and he got fucking sick of that shit. And he's like, fuck no, I ain't rejoining. Pick a goddamn lane, Scott Ian. Jesus Christ! So he elected that it'd be a smarter idea to just stick with a band that doesn't suck ass. So he reunited Armored Saint once a fucking again, and they went to the studio to make an album known as La Raza.
I'll say it in all honesty. I think that if people want to believe that their best material is now, of bands who've been around a long time, and most of it isn't. You know, oh, it's our best record. It's the best one yet. No, it's not. No, it's not. But you want to go in when you make a record and at least believe that.
Now, La Raza is a bit of a weird one. It has some really damn good songs on it, stuff that I think is better than stuff off Revelations. But overall, it's probably their weakest release. It starts out with Loose Cannon, which is alright, and then it goes into Head On, which is alright, and then Left Hook from Right Field. which is like a song about boxing and shit like that. It had a music video and everything. It has a catchy chorus, but it's not that good. So right off the bat, it's starting out really kind of wonky. And you also have a song there called Little Monkey, which is fucking awful. What were you thinking with that shit?
Little monkey, I really think I smell something funky. Little monkey, please tell me you pulled them out with a master.
But everything else in this album is A-grade material. Get Off the Fence is groovy and fucking rocking.
Free fall on one side. A waffle of fast pride. Tap that email. Just proceed and deal with decision made.
Chilled, Blackfeet Blues. Oh, and the title track, one of their best songs in years. Then again, they hadn't had a song in 10 fucking years, but it's still the best song in years. The album ends on a really strong note, though. Bandit Country, no, not Bat Country, not that Overkill logo ripping off fake shitty band. We're talking about Bandit Country, a song that has a really awesome choppy riff to it that's kind of more unplugged, so it gets that like bluesy country feel to it. But man, does it get fucking awesome, especially in the chorus. Love the song. It feels very exciting.
All these is
That's La Raza. I do enjoy listening to it more, though, than Revelations. Maybe I just got to keep hammering in the fucker. I could see myself really getting into Left Hook from Right Field. But some of the other songs, especially Little Monkey, good God. But you know what? All that would not matter when they went into the current album that they currently have, this current time of current. We have an album that is the best album that they have done in years! I gotta say, My Kids and Retards, although When Hands Down isn't like a complete return to the old days of epic power metal riffs, it never will. David Pritchard is no longer there to do that. But this album gets damn close by being heavy as fuck and awesome, giving us some of the best songs in years, beating a lot of the stuff on Nod to the Old Schools even. Stuff better than that shit, better than Revelation, better than La Raza. Destroying some of that shit. Of course, you have the title track, When Hands Down. God damn, the song about racing. It has a music video and everything. It's fucking awesome. The song Mess is heavy as fucking rules. That was then, way back when. Weird fucking song title. Really good song about getting into the Hollywood and industry and shit like that, and how fucking shitty it is. You have some damn good epics on here as well, like In an Instant and Muscle Memory, which that's the favorite of my two epics. Muscle Memory has a great build-up. The chorus is fucking awesome.
My soul memory is what I used to carry me. My soul memory ain't no way I worry about a thing.
But my favorite song on here is the song that is about pornography and addiction to porn and how society is overexposed to it. They even have a pretty hilariously cringy music video, but I love that shit. It is fucking evil and riffy as hell. It's the best song that they've done in years. What Exercise in Debauchery, holy shit. It is like the song Symbol of Salvation Part 2, and just as motherfucking good. And Joey Beer's bass solo, oh my god! Last song I want to talk about is the last one that everyone makes fun of, Up Yours. Everyone says it's cringy and whatnot, but you know what? I think the song's fucking awesome. It's fun, and it's catchy as hell. I love almost every second of this album. It is almost as good as the classic run of albums from the 80s. So that is Armored, Mother, Trucking, Saint. Holy shit, they are fucking consistent. Although there are a few chinks in the armor, you could even start with any of their new albums and you could easily get into this band. Very appealing, but they were always changing their sound. And I like that even when they reunited, they weren't trying to redo the glory days and shit like that. They're always ever evolving, and David Pritchard would be so fucking proud.
Subscribe to the Downfall Network.